Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is Every Disturbing Secret of Greek Gods. You get comfortable, take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Every Disturbing Secret of Greek Gods. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that the world is still young. The mountains have not yet become ordinary landmarks. The sea still seems endless and mysterious, and every thunderstorm feels like the voice of an unseen power. Night falls slowly over the hills of ancient Greece, and the only sounds are the gentle wind moving through olive trees, the distant cry of an owl, and the soft rhythm of waves meeting the rocky shore. In this quiet world, people believed they were never truly alone. Every gust of wind, every unexpected storm, every successful harvest, and every terrible disaster could be traced back to the will of beings who lived high above them. These beings were not distant creators who remained hidden from the affairs of mortals. They watched, they argued, they loved, they hated, they interfered. They were the gods of Olympus. Today, many people imagine these gods as noble figures carved in flawless white marble. Museums display statues that seem calm, elegant, and almost perfect. Modern stories often portray them as powerful heroes who protect humanity or guide civilizations toward greatness. But ancient storytellers remembered something far stranger. Behind every magnificent temple stood whispers of jealousy. Behind every sacred ritual lay stories of revenge. Behind every divine celebration hid uncomfortable truths that many people today rarely hear. The gods were not simply powerful. They were deeply human in their emotions while possessing limitless supernatural strength. That combination made them both fascinating and frightening. Imagine living in a village where your future depended upon the mood of a god who could become angry. Simply because someone forgot an offering, or because another deity insulted them during a feast on Mount Olympus. Life under such beings was unpredictable. The ancient Greeks understood this uncertainty better than anyone. They did not worship perfect gods because they believed perfection existed. Instead, they worshipped powerful gods because power demanded respect. Many modern readers ask an interesting question. Why would anyone admire gods who behaved in ways that often seem cruel? The answer begins with understanding the world in which these stories were born. Ancient Greece was a place where life itself could change overnight. A healthy harvest might suddenly fail. A peaceful sea might become violent within hours. Disease could spread without warning. Earthquakes could destroy entire cities before sunrise. Without scientific explanations, these terrifying events felt personal. Someone or something must be responsible. The gods became explanations for a world filled with uncertainty. Yet those explanations reflected reality. Nature is not always gentle. Neither were the Olympians. As the stars slowly appear above the mountains, picture yourself climbing a narrow stone path toward a small hilltop shrine. Oil lamps flicker in the darkness. Someone has recently left fresh bread beside a simple altar. Nearby, smoke rises quietly from burned offerings. No priest speaks, no crowd gathers, only silence remains. Even here, the air carries a feeling that invisible eyes might be watching. This feeling shaped Greek religion more than fear alone. Respect, caution, gratitude, and anxiety existed together. One could never assume a god would respond kindly. The greatest secret about the Greek gods may not be any individual myth. It may be that the gods themselves represented a universe that refused to promise fairness. Unlike later religious traditions that often emphasize moral perfection, the Olympian gods reflected the complicated nature of existence itself. Good people suffered. Cruel people sometimes prospered. Heroes made terrible mistakes. Villains occasionally displayed unexpected kindness. Even the gods changed their minds. This uncertainty made every prayer meaningful. It also made every decision dangerous. At the center of this divine family stood Zeus, king of the gods. His name became almost synonymous with authority. Lightning answered his command. Storm clouds gathered when he wished. Kings claimed their right to rule through his blessing. From a distance, Zeus appeared unstoppable. Yet the ancient stories quietly reveal another truth. The king of Olympus was constantly worried. He feared rebellion. He feared prophecy. He feared losing the throne that he himself had taken through violence. Long before humanity knew Zeus as ruler, another generation controlled the universe. The Titans. Their reign stretched into an age almost beyond memory. Among them ruled Cronus. Cronus himself had overthrown his own father, Uranus. Power, from the very beginning, passed through betrayal. The cycle had already begun. Cronus heard a prophecy. One of his own children would someday overthrow him exactly as he had overthrown his father. Rather than accepting fate, Cronus chose horror. Each time his wife Rhea gave birth, he swallowed the newborn child whole. Imagine the silence that followed each birth. No celebration, no lullaby. Only fear. Hestia disappeared into darkness, then Demeter, then Hera, then Hades, then Poseidon. 5 children vanished before they could even know the world. To modern ears, the story sounds shocking. To ancient listeners, however, it explained something profound. Power often destroys what it loves most because it fears losing control. When Zeus was born, Rhea finally refused to surrender another child. Instead, she wrapped a stone in blankets. Cronus swallowed the stone without realizing the deception. Meanwhile, the infant Zeus grew in secret. Many traditions describe him being hidden on the island of Crete. Some stories say magical beings clashed their weapons together whenever baby Zeus cried, preventing Cronus from hearing him. Others describe divine goats feeding the future king. Whether every detail was believed literally mattered less than the larger idea. Hope survived through secrecy. One hidden child would eventually change everything. Years passed quietly. The child became stronger. Eventually, Zeus returned. Rather than attacking immediately, he relied upon intelligence. Ancient myths often celebrate strength, but they also admire cleverness. Through trickery, Zeus forced Cronus to vomit back the children he had swallowed. One by one, they emerged alive. The family reunited. Then came war. Not a battle lasting hours, not even years. The Titanomachy continued for a decade. Imagine mountains shaking beneath unimaginable force, lightning tearing open the sky. The earth trembling beneath creatures larger than imagination. The sea roaring against cliffs as immortal beings fought for absolute control. Victory finally belonged to Zeus and his allies. The Titans were imprisoned. The universe entered a new age. Most stories stop there. But hidden beneath this triumph lies another disturbing pattern. Zeus had defeated tyranny. Yet many of his own actions would later resemble the fears he claimed to overcome. History, even among gods, often repeats itself. The throne changed rulers. Power itself remained dangerous. As dawn slowly approaches over ancient Greece, villagers awaken unaware that their myths preserve lessons extending far beyond entertainment. These stories were never merely about supernatural beings. They were reflections of ambition, desire, jealousy, fear, hope, and the fragile balance between order and chaos. The marble temples may now stand in ruins. The sacrifices have long since ended. Yet the questions those stories asked still remain. Can unlimited power ever remain compassionate? Does fear inevitably corrupt authority? And why do those who seek absolute control often become prisoners of the very destiny they hope to escape? The ancient Greeks never claimed to possess simple answers. Instead, they left behind stories that continue to whisper across thousands of years, inviting every new generation to look beyond the beautiful statues and discover the unsettling truths hidden beneath the surface. The first light of morning spreads gently across the mountains of Greece. Thin streams of mist drift through the valleys, and the sea reflects the pale colors of the waking sky. Shepherds begin leading their flocks toward fresh grass, fishermen prepare their boats, and merchants slowly open their wooden stalls within the city walls. To the people of ancient Greece, this ordinary morning was never entirely ordinary. Somewhere above the clouds, beyond the highest peaks that human feet could never reach, the rulers of the universe were already awake. Mount Olympus was not imagined as a silent paradise where perfect beings spent eternity in peaceful harmony. It was described as a place filled with conversation, disagreement, celebration, pride, and hidden resentment. Imagine yourself climbing higher and higher until the air becomes cool and crisp. The forests below disappear beneath a blanket of cloud. Before you rises a magnificent palace, unlike anything built by human hands. Golden halls shine softly beneath the morning sun. Marble columns seem almost alive. Streams of clear water flow through gardens where flowers never fade. At first glance, everything appears peaceful, but appearances can be wonderfully deceptive. Inside these halls lived a family unlike any other. They laughed together. They feasted together. They argued constantly. No matter how magnificent Olympus appeared from below, it remained a household filled with rivalries that could shake the entire world. This is one of the most disturbing truths hidden within Greek mythology. The fate of countless mortals often depended upon arguments that began over wounded pride rather than justice. A single insult spoken during a feast could eventually lead to the destruction of cities. A careless promise could change generations. A forgotten invitation could begin a war. The gods possessed unimaginable strength, yet they often reacted with emotions that every ordinary human could recognize. Perhaps that is exactly why these stories survived. They never presented the universe as distant or mechanical. Instead, they imagined creation itself as deeply emotional. Among all these divine relationships, none carried more tension than the marriage of Zeus and Hera. From the outside, they represented the perfect royal couple. Zeus ruled the heavens. Hera ruled marriage, family, and queenship. Their statues stood proudly within temples throughout Greece. People prayed to Hera before weddings. Kings honored Zeus before important decisions. Together they seemed to embody order itself. Yet behind this image lay one of mythology's most troubled marriages. Ancient storytellers never attempted to hide this reality. In fact, they spoke about it openly. Zeus was famous for his endless affairs. Again and again, stories describe him pursuing mortal women, nymphs, and even goddesses. Sometimes he appeared in human form. Sometimes he transformed himself into animals. Sometimes he disguised himself in ways that allowed him to approach without revealing his identity. To modern readers, many of these tales feel deeply uncomfortable. Several involve deception, manipulation, or situations where the balance of power makes genuine consent impossible. These stories should not be understood as moral examples. Instead, they reveal that ancient myths often portrayed even their highest god as morally flawed. This may seem surprising. Many later traditions describe supreme deities as perfectly just. Greek mythology rarely does. Instead, Zeus represents overwhelming authority mixed with overwhelming imperfection. His power was unquestioned. His behavior often was. Imagine living in a small Greek village. One morning, rumors spread that Zeus has fallen in love again. Nobody smiles. Instead, people quietly wonder whose life will soon become complicated. Because wherever Zeus's desires traveled, Hera's anger often followed. Here lies another disturbing secret. Hera was rarely able to punish Zeus himself. He was too powerful, too secure upon his throne. Instead, her fury frequently fell upon those connected to him. Sometimes innocent women, sometimes their children, sometimes entire families. One of the most heartbreaking examples concerns Heracles, known to the Romans as Hercules. Long before he became the legendary hero famous for impossible labors, he was simply an infant. His only crime was being Zeus's son. That alone earned Hera's hatred. According to one famous tradition, snakes were sent into the nursery while the baby slept peacefully beside his brother. Imagine the quiet room. Moonlight enters through an open window. Everything seems calm. Then two enormous serpents silently slide across the stone floor. Most babies would have stood no chance, yet Heracles grasped each snake with astonishing strength, crushing them before anyone could rescue him. The story celebrates his divine power, yet it also raises an unsettling question. Why would a goddess of family attempt to kill a sleeping child? The answer lies within Greek mythology's uncomfortable honesty. The gods were not symbols of perfect morality. They embodied powerful emotions carried to impossible extremes. Jealousy became devastating. Love became obsessive. Anger became catastrophic. nothing remained small. Everything echoed across heaven and earth. As the years passed, Hera's hostility never truly disappeared. Heracles eventually grew into one of Greece's greatest heroes. Yet even adulthood brought no peace. Driven temporarily into madness through Hera's influence, he unknowingly killed members of his own family. When sanity returned, unbearable grief consumed him. To seek purification, he accepted the famous 12 labors. Modern audiences often celebrate these adventures as exciting tales of monsters and heroic courage. But hidden beneath them lies profound sorrow. The greatest hero in Greek mythology spends much of his life attempting to recover from a tragedy that was never entirely his own choice. His victories begin not with glory, but with guilt. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout Greek myth. The gods often created problems that mortals were forced to solve. Rewards rarely erased the suffering that came first. Imagine sitting beside a small fire as evening approaches. An elderly storyteller begins sharing these tales with children gathered around him. He does not promise them that good people always succeed. He does not claim that justice always arrives quickly. Instead, he quietly explains that wisdom often begins by recognizing how uncertain life truly is. Perhaps this honesty made these stories unforgettable. They reflected a world where fortune could change overnight, where success invited envy, where beauty attracted danger, where happiness itself sometimes seemed temporary. Even among the gods, security remained fragile. Another curious truth emerges when we look closely at Olympus. Although Zeus ruled as king, his authority was never completely absolute. Again and again, prophecies appeared that frightened even him. The ancient Greeks believed that fate itself stood beyond every god. This idea surprises many readers. Surely the King of Heaven could command destiny. Yet myth repeatedly suggests otherwise. There existed mysterious powers older than Olympus itself. These forces measured the thread of every life. Even Zeus watched them with caution. Imagine the ruler of the universe pausing before making an important decision, not because he lacked strength, but because he understood that some events could never be prevented. This belief gave Greek mythology a unique atmosphere. Power had limits. Knowledge had limits. Even immortality had limits. The gods could delay destiny. They could influence it. Sometimes they could reshape its path, but they could never erase it completely. Perhaps that is why fear lingered even within paradise. Olympus glittered with gold, music, and eternal feasts. Yet beneath every celebration rested an uncomfortable awareness. Tomorrow might bring another prophecy, another betrayal, another conflict, another child destined to challenge the old order. The cycle that began with Uranus and Cronus had not truly ended. It simply waited, waiting patiently, like distant thunder beyond the mountains. As darkness slowly settles once more across ancient Greece, the lamps within homes begin to glow. Families gather around simple evening meals, speaking quietly while shadows dance upon stone walls. Somewhere far above, the gods continue their endless conversations, unaware that thousands of years later, people across the world would still wonder whether these immortal rulers were ever worthy of the worship they received. And perhaps that question has no final answer. The Greek gods were magnificent. They were terrifying. They inspired breathtaking works of art. They also inspired caution. For the ancient Greeks understood something that later generations sometimes forget. Beauty and danger often walk side by side. The brightest palace may hide the darkest secrets. And nowhere was that more true than upon the shining heights of Mount Olympus. Night settles gently across the ancient world once again. The stars slowly appear above the quiet valleys, one after another, until the sky becomes a great blanket of shimmering light. Small fires burn outside stone homes, their warm glow dancing against rough walls as families finish their evening meals. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd softly calls to the last of his sheep, while waves continue their endless conversation with the rocky shores of Greece. For the people living in these lands, darkness was never simply the absence of daylight. It was a reminder that countless mysteries remained hidden beyond human sight. Every mountain cast long shadows. Every forest concealed unknown paths. Every cave seemed capable of leading into another world. And among all the divine beings worshipped throughout Greece, few inspired as much quiet unease as the god who ruled beneath the earth. His name was Hades. Today, many people immediately associate Hades with evil. Modern stories often present him as a devil-like figure, a ruler of endless punishment who delights in suffering. The ancient Greeks saw something far more complicated. Hades was feared, certainly. But fear did not necessarily mean hatred. He ruled the land of the dead because someone had to. When Zeus divided the universe among his brothers after defeating the Titans, the heavens became Zeus's kingdom. The endless sea belonged to Poseidon. The unseen realm beneath the earth fell to Hades. It was not a reward, nor was it entirely a punishment. It was simply his responsibility. Imagine standing at the entrance of a dark cave where cool air quietly drifts outward. The daylight behind you slowly fades as your eyes adjust to the growing darkness. Somewhere far below, unseen rivers flow endlessly through silent caverns. The Greeks imagined that every human being, whether king or farmer, hero or child, would eventually travel toward this hidden kingdom. Death spared no one, not even those blessed by the gods. This certainty shaped the Greek understanding of life. Unlike many later traditions that focus primarily on reward or punishment after death, Greek mythology often described the underworld as a place where nearly everyone eventually arrived. Some souls found peace, some received punishment. Others wandered quietly in a shadowy existence that resembled a fading memory of life itself. Perhaps this was one of mythology's gentlest reminders. Fame disappears, beauty fades, power ends. Only the journey continues. The entrance to the underworld was guarded by a creature whose image has survived for thousands of years. Cerberus. Imagine a dog larger than any horse, its enormous paws striking the stone with heavy certainty. 3 heads watch every direction at once. Every growl echoes through endless caverns. Its purpose was simple. No living soul entered without permission. No dead soul escaped. Cerberus was not evil. It merely protected the natural order. In Greek mythology, disturbing creatures often existed not because they enjoyed violence, but because they maintained boundaries that should never be crossed. Ancient listeners understood that life depended upon balance. Even death had rules, yet those rules were occasionally broken. Among the most haunting stories connected to Hades is the tale of Orpheus. Picture a gifted musician whose songs are so beautiful that birds stop singing to listen. Rivers seem to slow their current. Trees lean gently toward the sound of his instrument. Even wild animals become peaceful in his presence. His beloved wife Eurydice dies unexpectedly after a snake bites her. The world instantly loses its color. Unable to accept the loss, Orpheus attempts something no ordinary mortal would dare. He travels into the kingdom of the dead. This alone reveals an astonishing idea. Love, in Greek mythology, could become stronger than fear itself. As Orpheus descends into darkness, he plays music unlike anything the underworld has ever heard. The melody reaches the spirits of the dead. Even the endless rivers seem quieter. The judges pause. Cerberus grows calm. Finally, Hades himself listens. For perhaps the first time in countless ages, the ruler of the dead feels compassion. He agrees to release Eurydice. But one condition must be obeyed. Orpheus must walk ahead. He must not look back until both have completely returned to the world above. The journey begins. Imagine climbing an endless path through darkness. Behind you, soft footsteps follow. You desperately want reassurance. You long to know that the one you love is truly there. Yet you continue walking. The light of the surface grows brighter. Only a few more steps remain. Then doubt quietly enters the mind. What if she is no longer following? What if the gods have deceived me? What if silence means she has vanished again? Unable to resist, Orpheus turns. For one brief moment, he sees Eurydice reaching toward him. Then, she slowly disappears into darkness forever. No angry punishment follows. No thunder shakes the heavens. Only silence. The story feels painfully human. Sometimes fear destroys what love has almost saved. It is not always monsters that defeat us. Sometimes, uncertainty is enough. As the centuries passed, storytellers continued repeating this tale because it spoke to a truth that every family eventually understood. Grief cannot always be undone. Some losses remain. The gods may offer hope, but they rarely remove sorrow completely. Another disturbing secret lies hidden within the underworld itself. The Greeks believed memory could disappear. Before entering the deeper regions of the dead, many souls encountered the river Lethe. Its waters carried forgetfulness. Imagine kneeling beside a perfectly still river whose surface reflects no stars. You drink only a small amount. Gradually, names begin fading. Faces disappear. Childhood becomes uncertain. Even your own voice feels unfamiliar. Little by little, the light you once knew quietly slips away. This image unsettled ancient audiences. Death was frightening enough, but forgetting everyone you had ever loved seemed even more tragic. Memory, they believed, was part of what made a person truly alive. Without memory, identity itself became fragile. Not every soul shared the same fate. Those who had committed extraordinary crimes sometimes faced punishments that lasted forever. Among them was Tantalus. His offense differs across various ancient traditions, yet every version ends in the same dreadful image. Imagine standing in cool, clear water that reaches your chin. You are desperately thirsty. Each time you bend to drink, the water instantly disappears. Above your head hang branches filled with beautiful fruit. Whenever you reach upward, the branches rise beyond your grasp. Food remains visible. Water surrounds you. Yet neither can ever be enjoyed. The punishment never ends. This is where the English word tantalize eventually found its inspiration. Nearby, another soul endures endless labor. Sisyphus slowly pushes an enormous stone toward the top of a steep hill. Hour after hour, day after day, year after year. Just before reaching the summit, the stone slips away. It rolls back to the bottom. Everything must begin again. Imagine hearing that distant rumble forever. The effort is real. The exhaustion is real. Success never arrives. Many philosophers have reflected upon this image for centuries. Some see despair. Others see resilience. But the ancient Greeks saw another warning. Cleverness without wisdom often creates its own prison. Sisyphus had repeatedly attempted to outsmart both gods and death itself. His punishment reflected his choices. The underworld, then, was not simply a place of horror. It was a mirror. Each soul encountered the consequences of its own journey. Yet even here, certainty remained elusive. Different cities across Greece preserved different traditions. Some imagined peaceful meadows. Others imagined deeper shadows. The myths evolved as generations added new ideas. What remained constant was this quiet understanding. Life mattered because it ended. Mortality gave meaning to every sunrise, every conversation, every shared meal beneath the olive trees. Even the immortal gods sometimes envied that. For endless existence did not necessarily bring endless happiness. As the fire outside slowly burns lower, imagine an old storyteller lowering his voice until everyone leans closer to hear. He does not tell these stories merely to frighten his listeners. He tells them because every tale carries a question. If every life eventually reaches the same destination, then what truly matters while we still walk beneath the stars? The Greeks never answered this question with certainty. Instead, they left countless myths, each offering another quiet piece of the puzzle. Some spoke of courage. Others spoke of kindness. Many warned against pride. Almost all reminded listeners that no amount of power could place anyone beyond the reach of destiny. Far above, Olympus still gleams beneath the moonlight. Far below, the silent rivers of the underworld continue flowing through endless darkness. Between those two worlds, humanity carries on, living brief lives filled with hope, love, mistakes, and memories. Perhaps that fragile middle ground was always where the greatest stories truly belonged. The quiet hours before dawn have always carried a certain kind of mystery. The stars still shine brightly overhead, yet somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, morning patiently waits. The air feels cooler now, and a gentle breeze moves through the olive groves, carrying the faint scent of earth and wild herbs. Imagine yourself walking along an ancient stone road. The village behind you has fallen silent. Even the dogs no longer bark. Only your footsteps accompany you as you travel toward a lonely temple standing upon a hill. Its white columns glow beneath the moonlight. Oil lamps flicker before its entrance, and small offerings of bread, honey and fresh flowers rest quietly upon the altar. Someone came here not long ago, someone who hoped a god would listen. For the ancient Greeks, prayer was never simply a request. It was an act of uncertainty. No one could ever know how a god might respond. A humble offering might earn unexpected blessings. A forgotten ritual might invite disaster. This uncertainty shaped nearly every aspect of daily life. Among all the Olympian gods, perhaps none embodied this unpredictability more completely than Poseidon. Most people today remember him as the god of the sea. The image is familiar, a powerful figure with flowing hair, carrying a magnificent trident while standing above crashing waves. Yet the sea represented only part of his power. Poseidon ruled earthquakes as well. To ancient Greeks, these two forces seemed strangely connected. The sea could swallow ships without warning. The earth could split open beneath entire cities. Both inspired the same feeling, absolute helplessness. Imagine living beside the coast. Every morning begins with calm, blue water, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Fishing boats leave the harbor. Children laugh along the shoreline. Everything feels safe. Then, without warning, the wind changes. Dark clouds gather. The waves grow taller. The peaceful sea transforms into a roaring monster. To modern people, weather forecasts explain much of this transformation. Ancient sailors had no such certainty. When storms appeared unexpectedly, many believed Poseidon had become angry. Perhaps someone had failed to honor him. Perhaps another god had provoked him. Or perhaps no reason existed that mortals could ever understand. This was one of mythology's unsettling truths. The universe did not always explain itself. One of Poseidon's most famous conflicts reveals how deeply pride influenced even divine decisions. Long ago, a new city sought a protector. Both Athena and Poseidon desired the honor. The gods agreed that each would present a gift to the people. Whoever offered the greater blessing would become the city's patron. Imagine standing among the crowd gathered upon a rocky hill overlooking the sea. The air is perfectly still. Poseidon steps forward first. He raises his mighty trident. With one tremendous strike, the earth trembles. Stone cracks apart. From the ground bursts a spring. For a brief moment, everyone gasps in amazement. Then they taste the water. Salt. It cannot be drunk. In some traditions, instead of a spring, Poseidon creates the first horse, a magnificent creature unlike anything humans had ever seen. Strong, swift, beautiful, a gift of power. Then Athena quietly approaches. She kneels beside the cracked earth. From the soil grows a small olive tree. At first, the crowd seems unimpressed. It is only a tree, but seasons pass. The tree provides fruit. Its oil gives light. Its wood becomes useful. Generation after generation benefits from the same gift. The people choose Athena. Their city becomes Athens. To many listeners, this story appears simple. Wisdom defeats force. Yet another secret lies beneath the surface. Poseidon never truly accepted defeat. His anger lingered. The sea surrounding Greece continued reminding people that divine pride could endure for centuries. Even victorious cities remained vulnerable. The myths repeatedly suggest that gods remembered insults far longer than humans. Resentment could become almost immortal. This same pattern appears again in the adventures of Odysseus. After the Trojan War ended, most Greek heroes hoped to return home. Odysseus expected the same. Instead, his journey lasted 10 long years. Many dangers crossed his path. Some came from monsters, others came from nature. But one of the greatest obstacles was Poseidon himself. Why? Because Odysseus had blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus. The giant happened to be Poseidon's son. Imagine the endless sea stretching in every direction, day after day, week after week. The stars guide your ship each night. Home should be close, yet every time the coast appears within reach, another storm arrives. The wind changes. The waves rise. The journey begins again. That was the curse of Poseidon. Not immediate death. Something slower. Hope repeatedly delayed. This may have been even more painful. The ancient Greeks understood that despair often grows not from one great disaster, but from many smaller disappointments. Another island almost appears. Another safe harbor nearly welcomes you. Then everything changes. The sea teaches patience through suffering. As the morning sun slowly climbs above the horizon, fishermen once again carry their nets toward waiting boats. Many pause briefly before leaving shore. Some whisper small prayers. Others leave tiny offerings. Not because they believed every storm could be prevented, but because respect seemed wiser than arrogance. Greek mythology consistently warned against excessive confidence. No matter how skilled a sailor became, the sea always remained stronger. This lesson extended beyond the ocean. It described life itself. No human achievement could erase uncertainty. Even kings eventually encountered forces beyond their control. Among those forces stood another Olympian, whose stories often disturb modern readers. Apollo. Today he is remembered as the god of music, healing, prophecy, poetry, and sunlight. His temples attracted pilgrims seeking wisdom. His priests interpreted mysterious messages believed to come from the divine. At first glance, Apollo appears calm and graceful. His statues display remarkable beauty. His lyre symbolizes harmony. Yet many myths reveal another side. Apollo's pride could become devastating. One story begins with a satyr named Marsyas. Marsyas discovers a magical flute. He becomes extraordinarily talented. Eventually, confidence grows into boldness. He challenges Apollo himself to a musical contest. Imagine the excitement spreading across forests and mountains. Gods gather. Nature itself seems eager to listen. Marsyas performs beautifully. His melodies drift gently through the trees. Even the birds fall silent. Then Apollo begins. Every note carries impossible perfection. The contest ends. Apollo wins. Perhaps the story could have ended there, but it does not. Instead, Apollo chooses a punishment so severe that ancient audiences themselves found it unsettling. Marsyas is tied to a tree. His skin is removed while he remains alive. The tale is difficult to hear. Its purpose was not entertainment. It warned listeners about hubris. The Greeks believed challenging the gods carried terrible consequences. Yet modern readers often notice another uncomfortable truth. The punishment seems wildly disproportionate. Apollo does not merely defeat his rival, he destroys him. This reveals something important about Greek mythology. Divine justice was not always what modern people would describe as fair. Power frequently determined outcomes. Mercy remained uncertain. Imagine an old storyteller pausing after finishing this tale. The children around the fire sit quietly. No one speaks. The silence itself becomes part of the lesson. Respect, greatness. Do not allow pride to blind wisdom. Know the limits of your own abilities. Whether or not listeners agreed with Apollo's actions mattered less than understanding the danger of challenging overwhelming power. The myths rarely promise comfortable endings. Instead, they invite reflection. Far above, Olympus continues shining beneath the growing daylight. The gods celebrate victories. They remember old insults. They reward devotion. They punish arrogance. Their emotions remain as vast and unpredictable as the seas, the storms, and the mountains they govern. Meanwhile, ordinary people continue living their brief lives below, planting crops, raising families, building temples, and telling stories beside evening fires. Perhaps those stories endured for thousands of years because they never pretended that the world was simple. Beauty existed beside cruelty, love beside jealousy, wisdom beside anger, creation beside destruction. And somewhere between those opposites, humanity searched for meaning, just as it always has. The first rays of the sun now reach the highest peaks, bathing the marble temples in warm golden light. A new day begins, but somewhere beyond those clouds, another secret waits patiently to be told. Morning has fully arrived across the ancient Greek countryside. Golden sunlight stretches over vineyards, climbing gentle hillsides, while olive trees cast long shadows across winding paths that have been walked for generations. In the distance, smoke rises slowly from village hearths, and the scent of fresh bread drifts through the cool morning air. For a little while, the world feels peaceful. Children chase one another through narrow streets. Farmers prepare their tools. Merchants arrange their goods beneath colorful awnings. Everything appears ordinary. Yet the people living these quiet lives believed that invisible powers were never far away. Every successful harvest, every healthy child, every unexpected illness, every broken promise, all of these could, in one way or another, be connected to the gods. Among those gods was one whose presence was unlike any other. She rarely arrived with thunder. She did not command earthquakes. She did not rule the sea. Instead, she quietly entered the human heart. Her name was Aphrodite. Modern culture often remembers Aphrodite simply as the goddess of love and beauty. Paintings usually show her surrounded by flowers, gentle waves, graceful birds, and soft light. She appears peaceful, kind, almost comforting. But the ancient stories tell something far more unsettling. Love itself was never gentle. The Greeks understood that love could inspire kindness beyond imagination. It could also awaken jealousy, obsession, betrayal, and violence. Because Aphrodite ruled every side of love, not only its beauty, but also its dangers. Imagine walking through a crowded marketplace where hundreds of people pass one another without concern. Then, almost instantly, two strangers lock eyes. Nothing in the world around them changes. The sun still shines. The merchants continue shouting. The birds continue singing. Yet for those two people, everything feels different. The Greeks believed such moments belonged to Aphrodite, invisible, silent, powerful enough to alter entire lives. This power frightened even the gods. One of the oldest stories surrounding Aphrodite begins not with peace, but with a competition unlike any other. It started with a wedding. The marriage of Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis brought together nearly every deity upon Mount Olympus. Music echoed through magnificent halls. Golden cups overflowed with nectar. Laughter filled the air. Every important god had received an invitation. Every god except one. Eris, the goddess of discord. Imagine arriving at the entrance to a grand celebration, only to discover your name had been deliberately left from the guest list. The music continues inside. The laughter grows louder. No one notices your absence. Or perhaps they do. Perhaps that was the point. Eris did not shout. She did not storm into the hall. Instead, she quietly rolled a single golden apple across the floor. Upon it were written simple words. For the fairest. Then she disappeared. Silence followed, only for a moment. Soon, three powerful goddesses claimed the apple belonged to them: Hera, Athena, Aphrodite. Each believed herself worthy. None would surrender. A small object, a single sentence. Yet it would eventually lead to one of history's most famous wars. The gods asked a mortal prince named Paris to judge the contest. Imagine his position, standing before three immortal goddesses, each unimaginably beautiful, each capable of rewarding or destroying his future. Hera offered power. Athena promised wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite offered something entirely different: the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite. The apple became hers. At first, everything seemed settled. But promises carry consequences. The beautiful woman Aphrodite offered was Helen. There was only one problem. Helen was already married. Her husband was Menelaus, king of Sparta. When Paris later took Helen to Troy, kingdoms united against him. Thousands of ships crossed the sea. Cities burned. Heroes died. Entire generations disappeared into war. Imagine standing upon a quiet hillside years later. The fields remain empty. The homes have fallen into ruin. The laughter of children has vanished, all because of one decision made in a divine contest. Was the war truly caused by love? Or by pride? Or by the gods themselves? Perhaps the ancient storytellers wanted listeners to realize that great disasters rarely begin with armies. Sometimes they begin with wounded vanity. Another story reveals an even darker side of Aphrodite's influence. There lived a young man named Hippolytus. He admired Artemis, goddess of the hunt. He respected discipline. He valued self-control. Unlike many others, he showed little interest in romance. To Aphrodite, this felt like an insult. Not because he harmed anyone, but because he ignored her power. The goddess decided to remind the world that no one escaped her influence. She caused Hippolytus's stepmother, Phaedra, to fall hopelessly in love with him. Imagine the confusion, the shame, the impossible situation. Phaedra struggled desperately against these feelings. She knew they were wrong. She wished they would disappear. they never did. Eventually, tragedy consumed the household. False accusations, broken trust, death, entire lives destroyed. Not through swords, not through monsters, but through emotions no human being could fully control. To modern readers, these stories often seem harsh. Why would a goddess punish someone simply for choosing a different path? The myths never provide comfortable answers. Instead, they remind listeners that every force in nature possesses two faces. Fire warms homes. Fire also destroys forests. The sea feeds villages. The sea sinks ships. Love creates families. Love also begins wars. The Greeks did not divide emotions into simple categories of good and evil. They recognized their complexity. Perhaps that is why Aphrodite remained both beloved and feared. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, imagine walking through a temple dedicated to the goddess. Fresh roses decorate the entrance. Soft music echoes gently beneath the stone roof. Young couples quietly offer prayers before marriage. Sailors ask for safe journeys. Parents pray for healthy children. The atmosphere feels peaceful. Yet everyone present knows the same goddess capable of blessing love can also awaken unbearable longing. Respect, once again, becomes the central lesson. The Greeks believed every gift carried responsibility. Beauty without humility could become dangerous. Desire without wisdom could become destructive. Even happiness required balance. This idea appears repeatedly throughout Greek mythology. No blessing remained entirely free from risk. Far above Olympus, the gods continued watching the lives of mortals unfold like countless tiny stories scattered across the earth. Some stories ended in joy. Others ended in sorrow. Many ended somewhere between the two. Perhaps that uncertainty made life precious. As the warm afternoon slowly begins to soften toward evening, long shadows stretch once more across the hills of Greece. The wind carries the distant sound of temple bells. Somewhere, another storyteller gathers listeners around a quiet fire. Another ancient tale is about to begin. And hidden within that tale waits yet another disturbing secret of the gods. One that reveals even wisdom and war were never as simple as they first appeared. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening. The bright colors of the day soften into gentle shades of gold and amber, and long shadows stretch across the hills of Greece. A cool breeze moves through the cypress trees, carrying with it the distant scent of the sea. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd gathers his flock before darkness settles over the countryside once again. Imagine yourself following an old stone path toward a sacred grove. The trees grow thicker with every step. Sunlight filters gently through their branches, creating shifting patterns upon the ground. The air feels unusually still. Even the birds seem quieter here. This place belongs to Athena. Unlike many of the Olympian gods, Athena rarely acted out of uncontrolled emotion. She was admired for wisdom, careful planning, craftsmanship, justice, and strategy. Kings prayed to her before making difficult decisions. Soldiers sought her guidance before entering battle. Craftsmen believed she inspired skilled hands and patient minds. Among all the gods, she often appeared to be one of the fairest. Yet even Athena possessed secrets that remind us no Olympian was entirely free from pride. The ancient Greeks never imagined perfection. They imagined power mixed with personality. One of Athena's most unsettling stories begins with a young woman whose beauty became famous throughout Greece. Her name was Medusa. Today, nearly everyone recognizes the image. Snakes instead of hair, eyes capable of turning living people into stone. A terrifying monster whose face has appeared in countless books, paintings, and films. But according to one of the best-known later traditions, Medusa was not always a monster. She was once a beautiful maiden who served in Athena's temple. Imagine a peaceful sanctuary where polished marble reflects soft candlelight. The smell of incense drifts through the quiet air. Priestesses move silently between sacred columns, offering prayers with calm voices. It is a place meant for safety, a place dedicated to wisdom. Yet it becomes the setting for tragedy. According to this tradition, Poseidon desired Medusa. What followed has been interpreted in different ways throughout history, but in this version of the myth, Medusa becomes the victim of an act committed within Athena's sacred temple. The sanctuary itself had been violated. What happened next has troubled readers for centuries. Instead of punishing Poseidon, Athena transformed Medusa herself. Her beautiful hair became living serpents. Her face became so dreadful that anyone who looked directly at her instantly turned to stone. Imagine awakening one morning to discover that every reflection has become terrifying. No friend can safely approach. No family member can embrace you. Every meeting becomes fatal. The world slowly abandons you. Whether this version reflects the earliest Greek tradition or a later retelling, it has become one of mythology's most disturbing stories. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Why was the powerless transformed, while the powerful remained untouched? The myth offers no easy answer. Instead, it reminds us once again that divine justice in Greek mythology often followed rules that humans struggled to understand. Perhaps that uncertainty made these stories feel so real. Life itself did not always appear fair. Neither did the gods. Years passed. Medusa became something almost forgotten by ordinary people. She lived far away from cities, beyond dangerous seas and lonely cliffs, where few travelers dared to go. Her name gradually transformed into legend. Parents frightened children with stories of her gaze. Sailors whispered about distant islands where no birds sang. Yet somewhere beneath the terrifying image remained the memory of the woman she had once been. Then another hero entered the story, Perseus. Unlike many heroes, Perseus did not rely upon strength alone. Athena herself chose to help him. This creates another strange contradiction. The same goddess connected to Medusa's transformation later assisted the man sent to kill her. Imagine Perseus standing quietly before a polished bronze shield. Athena explains that Medusa must never be viewed directly. Only through reflection can he approach safely. Every step requires patience. Every movement demands perfect control. The cave is silent. Stone statues surround him. Each one was once a living person. Some still appear frozen in fear. Others seem almost peaceful. The deeper he walks, the colder the air becomes. Finally, Medusa sleeps. Perseus carefully watches her reflection within the shining shield. He never meets her eyes. One swift movement, then silence. The most famous monster in Greece falls without ever seeing her attacker. From Medusa's blood, another astonishing creature emerges. Pegasus, the winged horse. It is one of mythology's most beautiful images, yet it is born from one of mythology's saddest moments. The Greeks often placed beauty beside sorrow, creation beside destruction, hope beside grief. Nothing existed entirely alone. As evening deepens, imagine villagers gathering beneath the open sky, while an elderly storyteller reaches this part of the tale. Children lean closer to the fire. Adults remain silent. Some have heard the story many times before, yet each telling feels slightly different. Was Medusa always a monster? Or did tragedy slowly transform her into one? The storyteller never insists upon a single answer. Instead, he allows the question to remain. Perhaps every generation must decide for itself. Athena appears again in another remarkable story. This time, the challenge comes not from beauty, but from skill. A gifted young woman named Arachne becomes famous throughout the land for weaving cloth so extraordinary that people can scarcely believe human hands created it. Imagine colorful threads moving gracefully across a wooden loom. Every pattern seems alive. Birds appear ready to fly from the fabric. Flowers almost seem to bloom. Visitors travel long distances simply to watch her work. Praise follows wherever she goes. Slowly, confidence grows. Then confidence becomes pride. Eventually, Arachne declares that even Athena cannot weave better. The goddess hears these words. Rather than arriving immediately in divine splendor, Athena disguises herself as an old woman. She offers gentle advice. Be careful. Respect the gods. Skill is a gift. But Arachne refuses. She insists upon a contest. Athena accepts. Imagine two looms standing side by side inside a quiet hall. Neither weaver speaks. Only the soft sound of thread passing through wood fills the room. Athena creates scenes celebrating the greatness of the gods. Every line is flawless, every color perfect. Arachne chooses a very different subject. Instead of honoring Olympus, she weaves stories exposing the gods' deception, pride, and cruelty. Her work is astonishingly beautiful, perhaps too beautiful. Athena cannot find fault with the craftsmanship, yet the subject itself fills her with anger. In most versions of the myth, Athena tears the tapestry apart. Arachne falls into despair. Finally, she is transformed into the first spider, forever weaving delicate webs that glisten in the morning light. To ancient listeners, the lesson seemed clear. Pride invites disaster. Yet modern readers often notice something deeper. Arachne did not lose because she lacked talent. She lost because truth itself offended divine authority. This is another disturbing secret hidden within Greek mythology. The gods welcomed admiration. They did not always welcome criticism. As twilight settles completely over Greece, the first stars begin appearing once again above the mountains. The sacred grove grows quiet. Temple lamps flicker gently beneath ancient columns. Somewhere far above, Olympus shines beneath the same evening sky. The gods continue watching humanity, celebrating victories, remembering insults, and shaping destinies in ways mortals rarely understand. Meanwhile, below those distant heavens, ordinary people continued telling these remarkable stories, not because they believed every detail literally happened, but because each myth revealed something timeless about fear, ambition, pride, justice, and the fragile balance between wisdom and power. And in the quiet darkness beyond the trees, another ancient secret patiently waits to be told. The night has grown wonderfully quiet. Above the mountains of Greece, countless stars shimmer across the dark sky, their reflections trembling gently upon the calm surface of the Aegean Sea. A cool wind carries the scent of pine forests and distant salt water, while somewhere among the hills, an owl calls into the silence. Imagine sitting beside a small fire outside a simple stone house. The day's work is finished. The fields rest peacefully beneath the moonlight. Children gather close to their grandparents, waiting for another story before sleep arrives. Among all the tales they could hear tonight, one name always captures everyone's attention: Artemis. To many, she was the goddess of the moon, the wilderness, wild animals, and the hunt. She represented freedom, silence, the untouched forests beyond the reach of cities. Unlike Aphrodite, Artemis chose independence over romance. Unlike Hera, she never wished to become a queen. Unlike Athena, she rarely involved herself in politics or the affairs of kings. She belonged to the mountains, to rivers, to lonely valleys where only deer and wolves quietly wandered beneath ancient trees. Many people believed Artemis was among the gentlest Olympians. She protected children. She watched over young women. She guarded wild creatures from needless destruction. Yet beneath this peaceful image lay another disturbing truth. The gods of Olympus rarely tolerated disrespect. Even Artemis, whose heart often appeared compassionate, could become terrifying when her boundaries were violated. One of her most famous stories begins with a hunter named Actaeon. Imagine a warm afternoon deep inside a forest. The sunlight slips gently through the leaves overhead. Birdsong echoes from every direction. After hours of hunting, Actaeon becomes separated from his companions. He follows the sound of flowing water. Soon he discovers a quiet spring hidden among smooth white stones. The place seems untouched by human hands. Crystal clear water flows into a peaceful pool, surrounded by tall trees and blooming flowers. Without realizing it, he has entered one of Artemis's most sacred places. The goddess is bathing with her attendants. According to many versions of the myth, Actaeon never intended to spy upon her. His arrival is accidental. For a brief moment, their eyes meet. Silence falls. The forest itself seems to stop breathing. Artemis does not ask questions. She does not wait for explanations. She scoops a handful of water and throws it toward the hunter. Almost instantly, his body begins changing. His hands become hooves. His arms become slender legs. Antlers grow from his head. Within moments, Actaeon has become a magnificent stag. His mind remains human. His body does not. Imagine trying to call for help. Only frightened cries emerge. You run through the forest, desperately searching for your friends. They find you, but they no longer recognize you. Instead, they release their hunting dogs. The same loyal animals that once followed Actaeon now chase him through the woods. He knows every one of them by name. They know only the scent of prey. The pursuit ends exactly as countless hunts before it had ended. Only this time, the hunter becomes the hunted. The ancient Greeks found this story deeply unsettling. Some believed Actaeon deserved punishment. Others quietly wondered whether the consequence had been far too severe. Again and again, Greek mythology asks the same uncomfortable question. What happens when absolute power is offended? The answer is rarely comforting. As the fire crackles softly beside you, imagine the storyteller pausing before continuing. No one speaks. Everyone stares into the glowing embers. The lesson lingers in the silence. There are places not meant to be entered. Moments not meant to be witnessed. Some boundaries exist whether we understand them or not. Another story connected to Artemis carries an equally haunting message. Far away, in the proud city of Thebes, lived a queen named Niobe. She possessed wealth beyond imagination. Her palace overflowed with beauty. Most importantly, she had many healthy children. She loved them deeply. Over time, that love quietly transformed into pride. One day, during a festival honoring Leto, the mother of Artemis and Apollo, Niobe laughed. She questioned why anyone should honor Leto. After all, Leto had only 2 children. Niobe had many more. Surely she deserved greater admiration. Imagine those words drifting upward like smoke into the heavens. Olympus hears everything. Leto says nothing. She simply turns toward her children. Artemis. Apollo. No dramatic speeches follow. No warning arrives. The twins quietly descend from Olympus. Apollo strikes down Niobe's sons. Artemis strikes down her daughters. One after another. The palace that echoed with laughter only moments before falls into unbearable silence. Imagine walking through those once joyful halls. Small sandals remain beside doorways. Toys lie forgotten upon the floor. Curtains move gently in the breeze. But no voices remain. Niobe herself survives. She wanders through her empty home, unable to believe what has happened. According to legend, her endless grief eventually transforms her into stone. Yet even as stone, tears continue flowing down her face forever. The image remained unforgettable throughout the ancient world. Not because it celebrated punishment, but because it illustrated how pride could destroy everything a person loved most. The Greeks had a word for excessive pride: hubris. It appears in countless myths. Again and again, heroes suffer because of it. Kings lose kingdoms because of it. Even gods occasionally struggle against it. Perhaps no lesson was repeated more often. Respect the limits placed upon every living being. As midnight approaches, the forest grows darker. The moon climbs higher above the treetops. A silver light covers the hills, making every path appear both familiar and mysterious. Somewhere beyond the mountains, another god begins his nightly journey. Hermes, the swift messenger of Olympus. Most people remember Hermes for his winged sandals. He carried messages between gods and mortals faster than the wind itself. He guided travelers, protected merchants, escorted souls toward the underworld. Yet Hermes possessed another remarkable quality. He delighted in cleverness. Stories about him often blur the line between intelligence and trickery. According to one beloved myth, Hermes was only a newborn infant when he performed his first astonishing theft. Imagine the cave where his mother gently lays him to rest. Everything appears peaceful. The baby closes his eyes. Only moments later, he quietly slips away. By sunset, the infant has already stolen the magnificent cattle belonging to his older brother, Apollo. Not only that, he cleverly makes the animals walk backwards, confusing anyone who might follow their tracks. The image is almost playful. A baby outwitting the gods. Eventually, Apollo discovers the truth. He demands justice. Hermes smiles with complete innocence. How could a newborn possibly steal cattle? Zeus himself struggles not to laugh. In the end, Hermes returns the herd. To make peace, he offers Apollo a remarkable new invention. The lyre. Its beautiful music softens Apollo's anger. The brothers become friends. The story reveals another surprising aspect of Greek mythology. Not every conflict ended with destruction. Sometimes wit accomplished what force never could. Yet Hermes also reminds us that intelligence without honesty can become dangerous. A clever lie may solve one problem while quietly creating another. The ancient Greeks admired intelligence enormously, but they admired wisdom even more. The difference between the two mattered greatly. Far below Olympus, the villages slowly fall asleep. Oil lamps burn lower. The sea continues whispering against the shore. The stars wheel silently overhead, just as they did thousands of years ago. The stories endure because they never belonged only to the past. They continue asking questions that every generation must answer. How should power be used? Where does confidence become arrogance? Can justice exist without mercy? And perhaps the most difficult question of all, if even the gods struggled with pride, jealousy, anger, and temptation, what hope remains for ordinary human beings? The old storyteller smiles gently. He adds one more piece of wood to the fire. The flames rise for a moment before settling once again. Another tale waits beyond the darkness, another secret hidden among the immortal rulers of Olympus. And before the first light of morning reaches the mountains once more, that secret will quietly reveal itself. The fire has burned lower now. Only glowing embers remain, quietly breathing warmth into the cool night air. Above, the stars continue their slow journey across the heavens, while the moon casts a silver path over the calm waters of the Aegean Sea. The villages of Greece sleep peacefully, yet somewhere in the darkness an old temple still stands awake, its oil lamps flickering gently before weathered stone columns. Imagine yourself walking toward that temple. The road is empty. Your footsteps echo softly against ancient stones, polished smooth by countless generations. The silence feels almost sacred. Yet beneath that silence lies a truth the ancient Greeks understood very well. The gods never truly slept. Even during the quietest hours of the night, destinies were being woven. Promises were being remembered. Old grudges were refusing to fade. Among all the mysterious beings connected to Olympus, few inspired as much curiosity as the three sisters, known simply as the Fates. They were not Olympian gods in the usual sense. They stood apart. Older than many divine rulers, respected even by Zeus himself. Imagine entering a dimly lit chamber where three silent women work without pause. The eldest carefully spins a thread. The second measures its length. The third holds a pair of gleaming shears. No conversation passes between them, No anger, no joy, only quiet certainty. Every human life begins as a single thread. Every thread reaches its proper length. Eventually, every thread is cut. Kings, beggars, warriors, children, priests, queens, none escape. The ancient Greeks found comfort and fear in this idea at the same time. Comfort because life possessed meaning. Fear because no one knew where their own thread might end. Perhaps the most disturbing secret was not that death existed. It was that even Zeus could not always command it. Imagine being the ruler of heaven itself. Lightning answers your voice. Storms obey your command. Yet somewhere beyond your reach, three quiet sisters continue their work without asking permission. Power suddenly appears smaller. Even immortality seems less absolute. This belief gave Greek mythology a remarkable depth. The universe contained mysteries beyond every throne, beyond every palace, beyond Olympus itself. As the night grows deeper, another figure quietly emerges from the shadows. Nemesis. Her name would eventually become part of many languages. Today, people often use the word to describe an enemy. The ancient Greeks understood something more subtle. Nemesis represented balance. She watched carefully whenever pride grew too large, whenever success became arrogance, whenever power forgot humility. She appeared, not immediately, sometimes years later, but always at the proper moment. Imagine a wealthy ruler standing upon the balcony of his magnificent palace. He believes nothing can threaten him. His armies are loyal. His treasury overflows. His enemies have disappeared. He laughs at those less fortunate. He begins believing he deserves everything he possesses. Far below, unnoticed by everyone, Nemesis quietly begins walking toward the city. She carries no weapon. She makes no threats. She simply restores balance. This idea fascinated Greek thinkers. Fortune itself seemed alive. Those who climbed too high often fell the hardest, not because success was wrong, because excessive pride invited correction. This warning echoes through nearly every Greek myth. The gods themselves often became instruments of that correction. Another disturbing figure lived far from the shining halls of Olympus. Her name was Nyx, the goddess of night. Unlike Zeus or Athena, Nyx rarely appeared in heroic adventures. She remained something older, something quieter, something strangely mysterious. Imagine a darkness so complete that even the stars have not yet been created. No sunrise exists. No moon, no dawn, only endless night stretching across the newborn universe. From that ancient darkness emerged Nyx. Many myths describe even Zeus treating her with unusual respect. Not fear, exactly. Something deeper. Recognition. The understanding that some powers should never be challenged carelessly. The Greeks rarely described Nyx as cruel. She simply represented one of the oldest forces in existence. Night itself. Without darkness, light loses meaning. Without rest, life cannot continue. Yet darkness also hides uncertainty. Every sound seems larger. Every shadow appears alive. Children throughout ancient Greece likely listened carefully whenever storytellers spoke her name. Night was beautiful. Night was necessary. Night was never entirely safe. As the moon climbs higher, imagine walking through an ancient cemetery beyond the city walls. Simple stone markers rise quietly beneath olive trees. The wind moves gently through the grass. Nothing frightening happens. Nothing moves. Yet the atmosphere feels different. The Greeks believed spirits occasionally wandered near places like these, not always seeking harm, sometimes simply remembering. Memory held enormous importance throughout Greek belief. To be forgotten after death felt almost like dying a second time. This explains why heroes longed for glory, not merely for pride, but for remembrance. A famous name could survive long after the body returned to dust. Oblivion frightened them more than death itself. Meanwhile, on Olympus, another feast fills the golden halls. Music flows through magnificent chambers. The gods drink nectar. They eat ambrosia. They laugh. They argue. At first glance, immortality appears wonderful. Yet imagine repeating the same celebrations for thousands upon thousands of years, watching every human generation arrive and disappear. Seeing cities rise, watching those same cities become ruins, making new friendships only to lose them as centuries pass. Immortality carries its own loneliness. The gods rarely aged, but they watched everything else grow old. Perhaps that explains why they became so deeply involved in mortal lives. Human existence possessed something the gods could never experience: urgency. Every decision mattered because time was limited. Every farewell carried weight. Every sunrise became precious precisely because it could not last forever. The Greeks understood this beautifully. Mortality was not simply a weakness. Sometimes it was life's greatest gift. A brief life encourages gratitude. An endless one may encourage boredom. Near the edge of Olympus, imagine Hermes quietly looking down upon the sleeping world. Below him, thousands of tiny fires glow across villages and distant islands. Each light represents a family, a dream, a hope, a fear. Tomorrow some children will be born. Tomorrow some old men will take their final breath. The cycle never stops. Even the gods cannot halt its quiet rhythm. Perhaps this is why Greek mythology continues speaking to people today. It never promises perfect justice. It never claims life will always be fair. Instead, it gently reminds us that uncertainty has always been part of being alive. The people who first told these stories lived in a world filled with storms, earthquakes, disease, famine, and war. Yet they still found beauty beneath the stars. They still celebrated weddings. They still planted olive trees, whose fruit they themselves might never taste. Hope survived beside uncertainty. As the eastern horizon began showing the faintest hint of approaching dawn, the old storyteller notices several children have already fallen asleep beside the fading fire. The adults remain quietly listening. No one wishes to interrupt the peaceful rhythm of the tale. The night has become a journey. A slow walk through forgotten centuries, where gods and mortals lived side by side, each revealing something about the other. Yet the greatest secrets have not all been spoken, for there are still stories of impossible prophecies, stories of children abandoned by frightened parents, stories of gods who tried desperately to escape destiny, only to discover they had unknowingly fulfilled it. Those stories wait patiently beyond the coming sunrise, and with them comes another chapter in the long, mysterious history of the immortal rulers of ancient Greece. The first light of dawn quietly touches the distant mountains. The stars begin disappearing one by one, fading gently into a sky painted with soft shades of blue and pale gold. Birds awaken within the olive groves, greeting the new morning with songs that echo across peaceful valleys. Thin wisps of mist rise from rivers flowing silently toward the sea, and the ancient world slowly opens its eyes once again. Imagine standing upon a high hill overlooking a Greek city. Below you, narrow streets begin filling with life. Women carry water from public fountains. Bakers remove warm loaves from stone ovens. Merchants arrange clay pots, woven baskets, and fresh fruit before their shops. Children laugh as they chase one another through the marketplace. From a distance, everything seems wonderfully ordinary. Yet every person living below carries an invisible question. What has the gods planned today? No one could know. Perhaps today would bring celebration, perhaps sorrow, perhaps both. This uncertainty was woven into every aspect of Greek life, and nowhere does that uncertainty become more powerful than in the ancient prophecies. The Greeks believed that the future occasionally revealed itself through mysterious signs. A dream, a sacred bird, an unexpected storm, or the whispered words of an oracle. Among all these sacred places, none became more famous than Delphi. Nestled against the slopes of Mount Parnassus, the sanctuary attracted kings, generals, merchants, travelers, and ordinary villagers alike. Imagine walking for days across rocky hills just to reach its magnificent temple. Pilgrims arrive carrying gifts. Some bring honey, others bring wine. Many carry flowers or small statues carved from stone. Everyone waits patiently. Everyone hopes for answers. Inside the temple sits the Pythia, the priestess of Apollo. She breathes the mysterious vapors rising from deep within the earth. Her eyes slowly close. Her voice begins speaking. The words sound strange, sometimes clear, sometimes confusing, almost never simple. The priests nearby carefully interpret her message. Those listening leave believing they understand their future. Only later do they realize how easily certainty can become misunderstanding. Perhaps that is why the prophecies survived for so many centuries. They rarely lied, but they almost never explained everything. One king might hear a promise of victory. He marches confidently into battle. His army is destroyed. Only afterwards does he understand. The prophecy had spoken truth. It simply referred to someone else's victory. The future, the Greeks believed, could be glimpsed. It could not always be understood. This brings us to one of mythology's most haunting stories. The story of Oedipus. Imagine a royal palace filled with celebration. A prince has just been born. The king and queen smile with hope. Musicians perform joyful songs. Servants carry gifts throughout the halls. Everything appears perfect. Then the prophecy arrives. The child will one day kill his own father. He will marry his own mother. The words strike the palace like lightning. The king cannot accept them. Surely such horror can be prevented. He orders the infant abandoned upon a lonely mountainside. Imagine the tiny child wrapped in simple cloth beneath the open sky. The morning air grows colder. Wild animals roam nearby. The king believes he has escaped destiny. Instead, he has unknowingly begun fulfilling it. A shepherd discovers the baby. Unable to leave the child to die, he carries him away. The infant survives. He grows up far from his true family. Years later, another prophecy reaches the young man. Believing his adoptive parents are his real parents, he flees to protect them. Every step taken to avoid fate quietly leads him toward it. Along a narrow road, he argues with an unknown traveler. Anger grows. Weapons are drawn. The stranger dies. Neither man realizes the truth. The traveler was Oedipus's real father. The prophecy has begun unfolding. Still unaware, Oedipus continues traveling. Eventually, he reaches the city of Thebes. The city lives in fear. A terrifying creature waits outside its gates. The Sphinx. Imagine a creature unlike anything found in nature. The body of a lion, the wings of a great bird, the face of a woman. Calm, patient, watching every traveler approach. She asks only one question, a riddle. Those who answer incorrectly never leave alive. For countless weeks, the roads remain empty. Trade stops. Families mourn. No warrior has succeeded. No scholar has solved the mystery. Then Oedipus arrives. The Sphinx asks, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening?" Silence fills the air. The wind gently moves through the dry grass. Oedipus thinks carefully. Finally, he smiles. The answer is humanity. A baby crawls on 4 limbs. An adult walks on 2. An old person uses a staff. The Sphinx lowers her head. The riddle has been answered. According to many versions of the myth, she throws herself from the cliff, ending the terror that had haunted Thebes. The grateful people welcome Oedipus as their king. Their widowed queen becomes his wife. Only much later does the horrifying truth emerge. She is his real mother. The prophecy has been fulfilled completely. Not because Oedipus desired it, but because everyone involved spent years trying to escape it. Imagine the unbearable silence that follows this discovery. Every joyful memory suddenly changes. Every celebration becomes painful. Every success feels empty. The Greeks returned to this story again and again because it asked one impossible question. Can destiny ever truly be avoided? Or do our attempts to escape it simply become part of its design? The myths never provide certainty. Instead, they invite quiet reflection. Perhaps wisdom begins by accepting that not everything can be controlled. As the morning grows warmer, imagine an elderly philosopher walking slowly through the marketplace. Children run past him laughing. Young merchants argue over prices. Life continues. He smiles gently. He has heard these myths since childhood. He understands that they are about more than kings and monsters. They are about every human heart. Every person fears the future. Every person hopes to make the right choices. Every person wonders whether their path is truly their own. The ancient Greeks transformed those questions into unforgettable stories. Far above, the golden halls of Olympus shine brilliantly beneath the morning sun. The gods continue their endless conversations. Some speak of heroes. Some remember old betrayals. Others quietly watch the lives of ordinary mortals unfolding below. From the earth, everything seems distant. Yet every prayer, every sacrifice, every whispered hope still rises toward the heavens. And somewhere beyond even Olympus, the quiet hands of fate continue spinning their endless threads, unhurried, unstoppable, unchanging. The old storyteller looks toward the brightening sky. He knows only one final chapter remains. The greatest secrets of the Greek gods are still waiting. The story has traveled from the birth of the Titans to the shining halls of Olympus, through the forests of Artemis, across the seas of Poseidon, into the silent kingdom of Hades, and along the mysterious roads where destiny quietly walks beside every traveler. Only one final journey remains before the fire burns out completely. Only one last truth waits beyond the horizon. Morning has fully awakened across the ancient world. The sun now hangs comfortably above the eastern hills, spreading its warm light across vineyards, quiet rivers, and white marble temples that have stood for generations. The sounds of everyday life drift through the valleys. Blacksmiths strike glowing iron upon heavy anvils. Farmers guide oxen through fertile fields. Sailors prepare their ships for another uncertain journey across the restless sea. Life continues. It always has. It always will. Yet for the people of ancient Greece, every ordinary morning carried an extraordinary belief. The gods were watching. Not every moment. Not every conversation. But enough that no one ever felt completely alone. Imagine yourself entering a bustling marketplace, where hundreds of voices blend together into one endless conversation. Merchants bargain over olive oil. Potters carefully display newly fired jars. Musicians quietly play simple melodies, while children laugh nearby. Among this crowd walks an elderly traveler. His clothes are dusty from weeks on the road. No one pays much attention to him. A young woman quietly offers him bread. An old farmer shares fresh water without expecting payment. A child smiles politely. The traveler thanks them all. Then he quietly disappears. The next morning, rumors spread throughout the village. Perhaps the traveler was Zeus, or Hermes, or another immortal walking among ordinary people. This belief became one of the quiet foundations of Greek hospitality. Anyone might be a god in disguise. Every stranger deserved kindness, because disrespect shown to an unknown traveler might become disrespect shown to Olympus itself. This idea softened daily life. Not every myth involved punishment. Some encouraged generosity, compassion, humility. The gods were unpredictable. Therefore, kindness remained the safest path. Yet even this beautiful lesson carried a disturbing shadow. The gods often tested humanity without warning. Imagine helping a stranger simply because your heart feels generous. Now imagine refusing someone because you are tired, hungry, busy, only later discovering that your visitor was divine. The Greeks believed such possibilities were real. Every decision mattered. Another remarkable story tells of two elderly villagers named Baucis and Philemon. They lived in a tiny cottage, far from wealth or power. One evening, two weary travelers knocked upon their door. Every richer household nearby had already refused them. Only the old couple welcomed the strangers. They shared their simple meal, offered their best chairs, poured what little wine remained. As the evening continued, something unusual happened. The wine jug never emptied. No matter how many cups they poured, more wine quietly appeared. The old couple realized the truth. Their guests were Zeus and Hermes. The surrounding villages, which had rejected the travelers, were destroyed by a great flood. Only the humble cottage remained standing. It was transformed into a magnificent temple. The elderly couple were granted one final wish. They asked only that neither should live without the other. Years later, when death finally approached, they were transformed into two great trees growing side by side forever. The tale feels peaceful, gentle, yet hidden beneath it remains another reminder. The gods rewarded kindness, but they also judged silently. No announcement preceded the test. No warning arrived beforehand. Life itself became the examination. As the sun climbs higher, imagine walking toward another temple. Its marble steps have become warm beneath the growing heat. Priests quietly prepare offerings. Children carry baskets of flowers. Musicians tune simple wooden flutes. Everything appears calm, yet every ritual reflects the same ancient understanding. The gods desired respect more than perfection. Human beings would always make mistakes. What mattered was remembering humility. Perhaps that explains why one particular word appears again and again throughout Greek mythology. Hubris, excessive pride. Not healthy confidence, not quiet satisfaction, but the dangerous belief that one stands above everyone else. Kings fell because of it. Heroes suffered because of it. Entire cities vanished because of it. Even some gods struggled against it. The myths repeated this warning so often because the Greeks believed pride blinded judgment. Once humility disappeared, disaster quietly followed. Imagine standing upon a mountain path overlooking the entire Greek countryside. The sea glitters in the distance. Tiny villages seem almost like toys beneath the vast blue sky. Birds circle effortlessly upon warm currents of air. From this height, human concerns appear wonderfully small. Arguments, ambition, jealousy, wealth, fame. Everything seems temporary. Perhaps this is exactly what the myths hoped listeners would eventually understand. The gods appeared immortal, yet even their greatest victories never ended conflict forever. Cronus overthrew Uranus. Zeus overthrew Cronus. Prophecies warned Zeus of future challenges. Every generation inherited both triumph and uncertainty. Nothing remained permanent. Not kingdoms, not beauty, not power. Only change endured. As the afternoon slowly approaches, the old storyteller who has guided us through these ancient tales looks toward the children gathered around him. Some have listened with wide, curious eyes. Others have quietly drifted into peaceful sleep beside the fire. The storyteller smiles. His voice grows softer. You have heard stories of thunder. You have heard stories of monsters. You have heard stories of heroes. But remember, the greatest monsters were not always creatures with claws. Sometimes they were pride. Sometimes jealousy. Sometimes fear. The gods themselves carried these burdens, and because of that, they looked strangely human. That may be the greatest secret hidden within Greek mythology. The Olympians were never designed to be perfect examples of morality. They were reflections, mirrors held before humanity. When people saw Zeus's ambition, they recognized their own desire for control. When they witnessed Hera's jealousy, they remembered the dangers of resentment. When Poseidon's anger unleashed terrible storms, they saw the destructive power of uncontrolled rage. When Athena valued wisdom, they understood the importance of careful thought. When Aphrodite inspired impossible love, they remembered both the beauty and the pain carried by the human heart. These myths survived not because every listener believed every event happened exactly as described. They survived because every generation recognized something familiar inside them. The names changed. The centuries passed. Empires rose. Empires disappeared. Yet people continued loving, fearing, dreaming, competing, forgiving, and making the same mistakes their ancestors had made thousands of years before. The Greek gods never truly disappeared. Not in the way mountains never disappear. Their temples became ruins. Their statues lost their colors. Their priests faded into history. But their stories continued traveling across the world, into books, into paintings, into theaters, into films, into conversations between parents and children, into quiet evenings like this one. Perhaps that is the greatest form of immortality. Not endless life, but endless remembrance. The sun now begins its slow journey toward the western horizon. Golden light settles gently across the marble temples one final time. The sea continues whispering against the rocky shore exactly as it did when the first storytellers gathered beside ancient fires. A shepherd leads his flock home. Fishing boats return safely to harbor. Smoke rises once again from village chimneys. Another peaceful evening approaches. Above it all, the imagined peaks of Mount Olympus glow softly beneath the fading light, where the gods, flawed, magnificent, terrifying, compassionate, proud, and endlessly fascinating, remain forever suspended between legend and memory. And as the first evening star quietly appears in the darkening sky, the old storyteller falls silent. The fire crackles gently. No one speaks. There's nothing more that needs to be said. The stories have completed their journey. Yet somewhere, whenever the wind moves through ancient ruins, or waves break gently upon forgotten shores, it almost feels as though the old gods are still whispering, reminding every new generation that the greatest mysteries were never hidden in the heavens alone. They were always hidden within ourselves. The evening has returned once more. The golden colors of sunset slowly disappear behind distant mountains, leaving the ancient landscape wrapped in soft shades of violet and deep blue. One by one, the first stars quietly emerge above the Aegean Sea, while gentle waves continue their endless conversation with the rocky shore. Imagine yourself sitting outside a small stone house at the edge of a quiet village. A simple oil lamp burns beside the doorway. The day's work has ended. The air smells of fresh bread, olive wood smoke, and the cool breeze drifting down from the mountains. An elderly storyteller settles into his familiar place beside the fire. He looks toward the dark silhouette of Mount Olympus. For a long moment, he says nothing. Then, almost in a whisper, he begins another tale. Many people believe the greatest danger came from monsters. But sometimes, the monsters were created by fear itself. The flames rise gently as the listeners lean closer. Far above the clouds, Olympus appears peaceful. Golden halls glow with eternal light. Music drifts softly through magnificent chambers. Immortal gods gather around endless feasts. From below, it looks like paradise. Yet appearances have always been deceiving. Even on Olympus, fear quietly lived beside power. Perhaps the greatest fear shared by nearly every ruler was the fear of losing everything. This fear haunted Uranus. It haunted Cronus, and despite all his victories, it continued haunting Zeus. The ancient Greeks noticed a pattern that few civilizations described so honestly. Power rarely feels secure. The more someone possesses, the more they fear losing it. Imagine standing upon the highest balcony of Olympus. The entire world stretches beneath your feet. You command lightning. The skies obey your voice. Kings pray for your blessing. Every temple honors your name, and yet, somewhere inside your heart remains a single question. What if tomorrow someone stronger appears? This quiet fear shaped many of Zeus's decisions. Ancient myths describe several prophecies, warning that one of his future children might become more powerful than he was. The memories of Cronus swallowing his own children had never completely disappeared. History lingered like an old shadow. Unlike his father, Zeus usually chose different methods. Sometimes he prevented certain marriages. Sometimes he intervened before prophecies could unfold. Sometimes he simply watched and waited. Yet every action revealed the same uncomfortable truth. Even the king of the gods could not escape uncertainty. The Greeks understood something timeless. Absolute power does not remove anxiety. Sometimes it creates even more of it. As darkness settles over the hills, imagine another quiet place far from Olympus. A lonely cave hidden among steep cliffs. Inside, a woman gently cradles her newborn child. Outside, only the wind can be heard. She whispers prayers that no god will notice them. Throughout Greek mythology, children were often born beneath the shadow of prophecy. Parents feared the future. Kings feared their heirs. The gods themselves feared destiny. How strange it is that immortals, who would never grow old, still feared tomorrow. Perhaps they were not so different from humanity after all. Another story quietly illustrates this truth. It concerns Dionysus. Today, he is often remembered as the god of wine, celebration, theater, and joyful festivals. But his beginnings were filled with sorrow. His mother, Semele, was a mortal loved by Zeus. When Hera discovered this, jealousy once again entered Olympus. Disguising herself as an elderly woman, Hera planted a dangerous idea in Semele's mind. "If Zeus truly loves you," she whispered, "ask him to appear before you in his full divine glory." The suggestion seemed harmless. Semele trusted Zeus completely. She made the request. Zeus hesitated. He knew the truth. No mortal could survive seeing the full majesty of a god. But he had already sworn an unbreakable oath. He could not refuse. Imagine the room growing brighter. At first, only a faint glow surrounds Zeus. Then lightning begins dancing across the walls. Thunder fills the air. the brilliance becomes unbearable. Within moments, the overwhelming divine power consumes Semele. The room falls silent. Only ashes remain. Yet Zeus refuses to let the unborn child perish. According to the myth, he rescues the infant and carefully places him within his own thigh until the child is ready to be born. Thus, Dionysus becomes known as the twice-born god. The image is strange, beautiful, mysterious. Life emerging from tragedy, hope surviving where none seemed possible. Greek mythology often reminded its listeners that destruction and creation walked together. One rarely existed without the other. As the fire burns steadily, the storyteller smiles gently. He pauses before speaking again. You see, the gods could command storms. They could move mountains. They could shake the oceans, but they could not prevent sorrow. Even immortality carried grief. The gods watched countless mortals live and die. Friends disappeared. Heroes faded into memory. Entire civilizations rose before their eyes, only to become silent ruins centuries later. Imagine living forever. At first it sounds wonderful. There is always another sunrise, another spring, another harvest, another festival. But eventually, every familiar face disappears. Every conversation becomes a memory. Every generation passes like falling leaves. Perhaps immortality carries a loneliness impossible for mortals to understand. The Greeks rarely described eternal life as perfect happiness. Instead, they suggested that endless existence came with endless remembrance. Nothing could ever truly be forgotten. As midnight approaches once more, the stars fill every corner of the sky. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a glowing river, connecting heaven and earth. Ancient travelers often looked upward during long journeys, believing the same stars watched both gods and mortals alike. Those stars witnessed every triumph, every betrayal, every promise, every broken oath. They remained unchanged while kingdoms came and went. Perhaps that is why the Greeks loved telling stories beneath the open sky. The heavens themselves seem to listen. The storyteller looks around the quiet circle. Several listeners have already closed their eyes. Others continue watching the flames dance gently in the darkness. His voice becomes softer still. There is one lesson hidden inside every myth. Never believe that strength alone creates greatness. Wisdom matters. Mercy matters. Humility matters. Even the gods paid dearly whenever they forgot that. The fire crackles quietly. The wind moves gently through the olive trees. Far away, beyond the reach of ordinary eyes, Mount Olympus remains silent beneath the moon. Its immortal rulers continue their endless existence, carrying both unimaginable power and surprisingly human flaws. And somewhere beyond those shining halls, another forgotten story patiently waits. One that reveals how even the smallest choices could echo across generations, shaping the destinies of both gods and mortals alike. The night has become wonderfully still. The fire that once burned brightly has settled into glowing embers, sending gentle warmth into the cool evening air. Above, countless stars stretch across the heavens, exactly as they did when the first Greek storytellers gathered beneath the open sky more than 2,000 years ago. The sea continues whispering against the rocky shores, and somewhere in the distance, An owl calls softly through the darkness. Imagine yourself taking one final walk through the ancient world. The marble temples stand quietly beneath the moonlight. The marketplaces are empty. The ships rest peacefully within their harbors. The mountains surrounding Greece seem timeless, watching generation after generation come and go. Everything feels calm. Everything feels complete. Our journey began long ago with the birth of gods, the rise of titans, and the struggle for the throne of the universe. We walked through the shining halls of Olympus, where beauty and jealousy lived side by side. We crossed the stormy seas ruled by Poseidon, wandered through Artemis's silent forests, stood before Athena's sacred temples, followed Hermes along hidden roads, and descended into the quiet kingdom of Hades. With every story, another secret revealed itself. At first, those secrets seemed disturbing because they showed gods behaving in ways we often expect only from humans. They became jealous. They became angry. They fell in love. They sought revenge. They made mistakes. They carried regrets. But perhaps those were never the greatest secrets. Perhaps the greatest secret was something much quieter. The Greek gods were never meant to be perfect. They were mirrors. Imagine an old bronze mirror hanging inside an ancient home. Its surface is not perfectly smooth. It reflects your face, but not exactly as you expect. Sometimes it reveals details you would rather ignore. Greek mythology worked in much the same way. When people heard about Zeus, they were not simply hearing about lightning. They were hearing about ambition. When they listened to Hera, they were hearing about jealousy. Poseidon reminded them of uncontrolled anger. Athena reminded them that wisdom requires patience. Apollo showed that talent without humility could become dangerous. Aphrodite revealed that love could heal hearts or break kingdoms. Hermes taught that intelligence carries responsibility. Hades reminded everyone that death belongs to every life. Each god represented something already living inside humanity. That may be why these stories survived, while countless others disappeared. They were never only about heaven. They were always about us. As the wind gently moves through the olive trees, imagine an elderly storyteller looking toward the youngest child sitting beside the fire. The child asks quietly, "Were the gods good?" The storyteller smiles. He does not answer immediately. Instead, he watches the flames dance for a long moment before speaking. They were powerful. They were beautiful. They were frightening. They were generous. They were cruel. They were wise. They were foolish. They were everything people could become. The child thinks carefully, then asks another question. "So, were they like us?" The old storyteller nods slowly. "No, we are like them." The fire crackles softly. No one laughs. No one speaks. The answer settles gently into the quiet night. Perhaps that was always the purpose of these ancient myths. Not to describe another world, but to help people understand their own. The Greeks never expected perfection from life. Their harvests sometimes failed. Storms destroyed their ships. Earthquakes shattered their cities. Disease arrived without warning. Wars changed everything. Yet despite all this uncertainty, they continued building temples. They continued writing poetry. They continued raising families. They continued planting olive trees that would not bear fruit for many years. Hope survived, not because life was easy, but because hope itself became an act of courage. Imagine now that the centuries begin moving forward. The great temples slowly lose their roofs. Their colorful paint fades beneath countless seasons of rain and sunshine. The priests disappear. The sacrifices end. The voices of ancient Greece grow quieter. Empires rise. Empires fall. New religions appear. New kingdoms are built. The old gods no longer receive offerings. Yet something remarkable happens. The stories refuse to die. Artists continue painting Zeus. Writers continue telling the Odyssey. Children continue hearing about Medusa, Perseus, Hercules, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, and Hades. The names change languages. The world changes. The stories remain. Perhaps this is another kind of immortality, not living forever, but being remembered forever. As midnight slowly approaches, the breeze grows cooler. The stars seem brighter than before. The old storyteller carefully places one final piece of wood onto the fire. The flames rise gently, then settle once again. He looks around at everyone listening. Some have fallen peacefully asleep. Others continue watching the glowing embers. His voice becomes almost a whisper. One day, you will leave this world. So will I. So did every king. So did every hero. So did every philosopher. The only question that remains is what kind of story will follow us. The Greeks believed names could outlive bodies. Good deeds could outlive monuments. Wisdom could outlive kingdoms. Perhaps they were right. Long after marble becomes dust, kindness is still remembered. Long after crowns disappear, courage still inspires. Long after temples fall into ruin, stories continue traveling from one generation to the next. The ancient world slowly fades around us now. The mountains remain. The sea continues its endless rhythm. The wind still moves through forgotten ruins, exactly as it did thousands of years ago. If you listen carefully, you might almost imagine hearing distant voices carried upon that breeze. Not voices demanding worship, not voices seeking fear. Only voices reminding us that every civilization leaves behind questions more valuable than answers. What is power without wisdom? What is love without compassion? What is victory without humility? What is immortality without memory? The Greek storytellers never insisted that everyone agree. They simply invited each listener to think, to wonder, to remember. The fire has almost gone out now. Only a few glowing embers remain. The old storyteller slowly stands. He brushes the ash from his hands and looks once more toward the stars above Mount Olympus. Then he smiles. Not because every mystery has been solved, but because some mysteries are meant to remain. The sea continues whispering. The wind continues wandering through ancient columns. The stars continue shining over a world that has changed beyond recognition. And somewhere, beyond history, beyond memory, and beyond the reach of time itself, the old myths continue waiting patiently for the next quiet evening, when another traveler sits beside another fire and asks to hear the stories once again. The storyteller gently nods. The fire fades into darkness. The night grows peaceful. And at last, the story comes to its quiet end.